The Godfather is often called the greatest film ever made. Not one of the greatest, but the greatest. It's a movie that has topped countless lists, influenced generations of filmmakers, and somehow managed to turn organized crime into high art. But here's the question: does it actually deserve that reputation? Today we are diving into The Godfather, what works and what doesn't, and whether this legendary classic still holds up 50 years later. Released in 1972 and directed by Francis Ford Coppola, The Godfather tells the story of the Corleone crime family and the transformation of Michael Corleone from reluctant outsider to ruthless mafia boss. At this point, the film's influence is impossible to overstate. It changed crime movies forever. Before The Godfather, gangsters were often loud, flashy criminals. After The Godfather, they became tragic figures, complicated anti-heroes, and symbols of power and corruption. But influence alone doesn't make something great. So let's start with what works. The performances. The cast is almost unfairly good. Marlon Brando's Don Vito Corleone has become one of the most iconic performances in film history.
You come into my house on the day my daughter's to be married.
What could have been a stereotypical mob boss instead feels like a real person. He's intimidating without raising his voice, powerful without showing off. Brando understands something many actors don't. True authority rarely needs to shout. Then there's Al Pacino. Michael Corleone might be one of the greatest character arcs ever put on film. At the beginning, Michael is detached from the family's criminal activities. He's the war hero, the good son, the one that escaped. By the end, he's become something far colder and more dangerous than his father ever was. What's remarkable is how subtle Pacino plays the transformation. There isn't some dramatic switch where Michael suddenly becomes evil. It's gradual. Every compromise pushes him further down a path he can never leave. The supporting cast is equally fantastic. James Caan brings explosive energy as Sonny. Robert Duvall gives Tom Hagen a quiet intelligence. John Cazale's Fredo is heartbreaking, because early on you can sense his insecurity. Every character feels fully realized. One reason The Godfather remains compelling is that it's not really about crime. It's about family. The murders, betrayals, and gang wars are just the backup. At its core, it's a story about power, legacy, and how family obligations can destroy individual identity. Michael doesn't become a criminal because he wants power. He becomes a criminal because he feels responsible. That's what makes the story so tragic. Every decision he makes feels understandable, even when it's horrifying. The script is packed with memorable dialogue, but it never feels like characters are delivering catchphrases. People speak naturally.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
The famous lines are memorable because they're attached to powerful moments, not because the film is trying to manufacture iconic quotes. The cinematography. The visual style remains stunning. Gordon Wills earned the nickname the Prince of Darkness because of how boldly he uses shadows. Many scenes are intentionally underlit. Faces disappear into darkness. Rooms feel oppressive. The result creates an atmosphere unlike any crime film before it. The Corleones aren't living glamorous lives. They're trapped in a world of secrecy and moral decay. The cinematography constantly reinforces that idea. The pacing of the character drama. One thing modern audiences may not expect is how patient the film is. The Godfather takes its time. Scenes breathe. Conversations unfold naturally. Characters are allowed to exist without constant action. The slower pacing helps build immersion. When violence occurs, it matters because the film hasn't numbed you with constant shootouts. What doesn't work? The film can feel overly slow. Let's address the biggest criticism first. The Godfather is not a fast movie, even by 1970s standards. It's deliberately paced. For some viewers, that's a strength. For others, it can feel a bit exhausting. There are stretches where the narrative momentum slows drastically, particularly during Michael's time in Sicily. While these scenes are important thematically, they can test the patience of audiences who are more invested in the power struggle back in America. It's not enough to ruin the film, but it's a legit criticism. Some female characters are underdeveloped. One of the film's biggest weaknesses is the treatment of women. Kay, Connie, and Apollonia all serve important narrative functions, but few receive substantial development. Kay is especially affected by this. She's crucial to Michael's story, yet much of her role involves reacting to Michael rather than pursuing goals of her own. This isn't unusual for films of its era, but it stands out more today. The movie spends so much time explaining the complexities of its male characters that the women can sometimes feel sidelined. The Sicily subplot feels uneven. The Sicily sequence contains beautiful cinematography and serves Michael's transformation. However, the romance between Michael and Apollonia develops extremely quickly. Even accounting for cultural differences and storytelling conventions, the relationship doesn't receive enough screen time to be emotionally powerful on its own. The audience understands why Michael is drawn to her, but compared to the richly developed relationships elsewhere in the film, this subplot feels somewhat rushed. Its legendary status can create unrealistic expectations. This isn't the movie's fault, but it's worth mentioning. Many people go into The Godfather expecting non-stop crime violence filled with epic drama and action. Instead, they get a slow-burning family drama. The gap between expectation and reality can leave some first-time viewers wondering what all the hype was about. The film rewards patience, but it definitely asks for it. The ending. The ending remains to be one of the greatest conclusions in cinema history. Michael orchestrates the elimination of his enemies while publicly presenting himself as a legitimate businessman. It's a masterclass in dramatic irony. The audience knows exactly what Michael has become. Kay desperately wants to believe otherwise. Then comes the final shot. The door closes. Kay is shut out. The audience is shut out. Michael has completed his transformation, not into his father, into something even worse. It's simple, it's devastating, and it's unforgettable. Final verdict. So, is The Godfather the greatest film ever made? That depends on who you ask. What I can say is this. The performances are extraordinary. Its writing is masterful. The cinematography remains influential decades later. Its themes are timeless. At the same time, it isn't flawless. The pacing can be slow. Some supporting characters deserve more development. Certain sections of the story are stronger than others. But greatness doesn't require perfection. The Godfather succeeds because every element is working towards a singular vision. It's not just a gangster movie. It's a tragedy. A story about family, power, and the cost of becoming the one thing you swore you would never be. And more than 50 years later, that is why people are still talking about it. Not perfect, but very close. If you enjoyed this review, let me know what you think. Is The Godfather truly the greatest film ever made? Or has his reputation grown larger than the film itself?
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.